is DNA considered part of biometrics in general? Obviously, each state will differ, each analysis will differ, but do you see DNA, for example, I'm specifically thinking of something like the Henrietta Lacks case. I don't know if you've read the book or anything like that, but her DNA was used to use for different things.
Right.
Would that be considered to be her ownership under these biometric data laws?
So the biometric data laws aren't necessarily around ownership, like we sort of see in the EU context. It's really around transparency and getting appropriate consents. So the short answer is it's not clear. It's really not clear. Part of it is because it's only a couple of states that have a law like this, and Illinois is the most aggressive in pushing it out. So the way the laws are drafted, like little tweaks here and there might substantially change that analysis. But a lot of the laws are not necessarily, like the biometrics around ensuring you got appropriate consent to use that data, not necessarily around sort of who owns that data and who owns the IP that's derived from that data. You know, I think the challenge we have with DNA is that it's inherently personal, right? So like, I understand that like you might be able to not identify it unless you have the appropriate codes or all of the information, but you could still identify it, right? There's still a capability to identify it. So, you know, sometimes it's expressly carved into biometrics. Sometimes it's not expressly carved in, but you can make a strong argument that it is. And I think that, you know, making sure that you understand when it needs to be addressed and sort of, again, it's going back to, did you get good data from the get-go? Because if they're giving it to you for research purposes, there's a strong argument that they should have understood it's going to be used for research purposes in a global sense, right? So it's really going back to the drawing board of how are we getting this data? Are we providing the appropriate consents to make sure that you have good data now and in 10, 20, 30 years? So, but the Henrietta Lacks case, you know, putting that in today's world is a very, there's so many components to that story. And I highly recommend reading the book if listeners have not read it. It was very good. But the data privacy component, I think, is something not necessarily highlighted in the book, but would be really interesting to explore in sort of a 2020 and beyond world.